And you know, sit there drinking coffee in Chatterton, and in the old days, like in my time, you'd see posters of Che Guevara, Jimi Hendrix, John Lennon, because revolutionary politics and rock and roll were going to set the world free. They were what young people believed in. They were proof of their commitment to ideas and to freedom and to thinking about how the world can be better. But now you're as likely to see posters of Einstein and Oscar Wilde, because ideas and the mind have proved of value, have proved eternal, and perhaps rock and roll and politics have proved less reliable as forces for good change. And so Wilde is now before us a kind of grand prince of Bohemia, a patron saint of students, outcasts, those who believe things can be better, those who believe the life of the mind is not confined to dusty libraries and pedantry, but is something that can set us free. And funnily enough, although his fairy stories, they are called fairy stories or children's stories, may seem very simple, they combine some of his greatest qualities of wit and charm and insight and the kind of imagination that knows how other people's lives are led. And I'd like to end my chatter with a reading of one of my favourite stories. It's called The Happy Prince. So I'll just pour myself a little water so I'm not too dry and clacky, because there's nothing more annoying than listening to someone who's dry and clacky. Even if the word clacky doesn't exist, it's annoying. Still frustrated. Marvellous. The Happy Prince. Set in a European town somewhere, we never quite know where. As late summer yields to autumn, it's around this time actually, let's say it was around about Oscar's birthday time, the story is set. The Happy Prince. High above the city, on a tall column, stood the statue of the Happy Prince. He was gilded all over with thin leaves of fine gold. For eyes, he had two bright sapphires, and a large red ruby glowed on his sword hilt. He was very much admired indeed. "He is as beautiful as a weathercock," remarked one of the town councillors, who wished to gain a reputation for having artistic tastes. "Only not quite so useful," he added, fearing lest people should think him unpractical, which he really was not. He flew into dark lanes and saw the white faces of starving children looking out listlessly at the black streets. Under the archway of a bridge, two little boys were lying in one another's arms to try and keep themselves warm. "How hungry we are," they said. "You mustn't lie there," shouted the watchman, and they wandered out into the rain. Then he flew back and told the prince what he had seen. "I am covered with fine gold," said the prince. "You must take it off, leaf by leaf, and give it to my poor. The living always think that gold can make them happy." Leaf after leaf of the fine gold the swallow picked off, till the Happy Prince looked quite dull and grey. Leaf after leaf of the fine gold he brought to the poor, and the children's faces grew rosier, and they laughed and played games in the street. "We have bread now," they cried. Then the snow came, and after the snow came the frost. The streets looked as if they were made of silver, they were so bright and glistening. Long icicles like crystal daggers hung down from the eaves of the houses. Everybody went about in furs, and the little boys wore scarlet caps and skated on the ice. The poor little swallow grew colder and colder, but he would not leave the prince. He loved him too well. He picked up crumbs outside the baker's door when the baker wasn't looking, and tried to keep himself warm by flapping his wings. But at last he knew that he was going to die. He had just strength to fly up to the prince's shoulder once more. "Goodbye, dear prince," he murmured. "Will you let me kiss your hand?" "I'm glad that you're going to Egypt at last, little swallow," said the prince. "You've stayed too long here. You must kiss me on the lips, for I love you." 'Tis not to Egypt that I am going, said the swallow. I am going to the house of death. Death is the brother of sleep, is he not? He kissed the happy prince on the lips and fell down dead at his feet. At that moment, a curious crack sounded inside the statue, as if something had broken. The fact is that the leaden heart had snapped right in two. It certainly was a dreadfully hard frost. Early the next morning, the mayor was standing in the square in company with the town councillors. As they passed the column, he looked up at the statue. "Dear me, how shabby the happy prince looks," he said. "How shabby indeed," cried the town councillors, who always agreed with the mayor, and they went up to look at it. "The ruby has fallen out of his sword. His eyes are gone, and he's golden no longer," said the mayor. "In fact, he's little better than a beggar." "Little better than a beggar," said the town councillors. "And here is actually a dead bird at his feet," continued the mayor. "We really must issue a proclamation that birds are not allowed to die here." And the town clerk made a note of the suggestion. So they pulled down the statue of the happy prince. "As he is no longer beautiful, he is no longer useful," said the arch professor of the university. And they melted the statue in a furnace, and the mayor held a meeting of the corporation to decide what was to be done with the metal. "We must have another statue, of course," he said, "and it shall be a statue of myself." "Of myself?" said each of the town councillors, and they quarrelled. When I last heard of them, they were quarrelling still. "What a strange thing," said the overseer of the workmen at the foundry. "This broken lead heart will not melt in the furnace. We must throw it away." So they threw it on a dust heap where the dead swallow was lying. "Bring me the two most precious things in the city," said God to one of his angels. And the angel brought him the leaden heart and the dead bird. "You have rightly chosen," said God, "for in my garden of paradise this little bird shall sing forevermore, and in my city of gold this happy prince shall dress me."